Hey, welcome to this issue of Safety Net. Hey, welcome back to this upcoming program, Safety Net, in which we speak with Scott Borden. Scott Borden is the campus police chief here at the University of Rio Grande, in which we're going to talk with Lieutenant Barry Call about distracted driving. So stay tuned. Hey, welcome to Safety Net. I'm Patrick Dangle, filling in for Sheriff Keith Wood. Sheriff Keith Wood had some important things that he had to take care of. And of course, I'm with Campus Chief Police Scott Borden. Scott, it is a pleasure always being able to fill in for Sheriff, because this is a really good, informative program.
Yes, sir.
The topic that we sort of selected this time was on distracted driving. And you know, it's interesting, since I travel a great deal, you can see there's a lot of distracted driving from the individuals that either I pass or they pass me.
Well, there's just some people trying to do business in their cars. They're texting, they're talking on the phone, they're not paying attention, and you know, on the highway that Lieutenant Call will address, but just, you know, on campus you have a lot of pedestrian students walking around, and you've got people driving down our streets, and you got the students texting while they're walking, you have the drivers texting and talking on the phone. It's just could be a very dangerous combination.
Oh, that is interesting. You know, you've had 33 years past experience in working for the Ohio State Patrol Force.
Yes.
And I know that they're out and about. We only really see them for a speeding ticket, or that's
what the perception. A lot of times they're out there when, you know, you'd hope if your tire goes flat, you run out of gas. They're there to help you on that. On campus, we've had a great relationship, especially with Lieutenant Call, and you know, just with commencement this last week, he sent 4 troopers over, and they helped with the traffic.
Huh.
I mean, you had a lot of anxious parents coming in for commencement and want to get in and get out, and their 4 troopers were just essential in making that happen. They participate in the homecoming events. They just were here a couple months ago doing some drug interdiction training. They're going to be here next week.
Yeah, I'm
helping us out on
the
active shooter training.
Shooter training. Well, let's meet our guest. It's Lieutenant Barry Call. Lieutenant, welcome.
Thank you.
It's my understanding that you're a lieutenant with the Gallia Megs Patrol Office.
Yes, I am.
And how many years have you been involved with the...
I've been involved with the Highway Patrol for over 26 years.
26 years,
yes.
Wow. So you're trying to catch up, and you're trying to pass Scott's...
I don't think I'm going to try to accomplish that feat.
Have you always been with the Gallia Megs Patrol?
No, I started out in Marietta as a trooper, then transferred back home to Gallia Post, and then I've been to Jackson, Athens, Ironton, then back to Gallia Post.
Oh, okay. All right, very good. And, you know, as a highway patrol, I know that Scott has had a lot of really great, I don't want to say stories, but great pieces of experience. And I would imagine that you have seen the good and the bad, and of course the ugly.
Yes, well, unfortunately that's part of our job, you know.
Yeah.
Take the good and the bad, and like you mentioned, the ugly.
Yeah, and I know that you have a number of different patrolmen that cover 2 counties.
Yes.
But that the way you work out the schedule and things of that nature, there's oftentimes many individuals out in force.
Yes, you know, we try to maintain at least 2 uniformed officers per shift. Most times we are up to 3 or 4 per shift, but there are times when there may be just one trooper for both Gallia and Meigs County.
Wow. And I know that you work in collaboration with Keith Wood, who's the sheriff.
Yes.
And the sheriff in Jackson, or Gallia. Gallia.
Sheriff Champlin, yes.
Yes.
We have fortunate to have very good relationship with both the sheriff departments in both counties, as well as the other agencies within the Gallia and Meigs County.
Huh. And I know that you work closely with the when you were in the highway patrol, and as well as working with the University of Rio Grande, you work very closely with the different police departments and the sheriffs. And
Well, you just have to, because there's just, people probably think sometimes there's too many police, but sometimes we feel like there's not enough, because you just want to service the public and keep the public safe. So we've, the patrol, one thing they pride themselves on, hopefully, is that relationship with other departments, and it's the same thing we've tried to accomplish here. I mean, Sheriff Champlin is very good to us, the Gallipolis Police Department, Chief Boyer, Sheriff Wood sending 5 or 6 of his deputies down to the active shooter thing next week. So, and just our relationship with the patrol, I've tried to carry that on from the patrol to do the same thing here.
Well, I think you've done a really good job. Let's talk about distracted driving. Just what is that?
Distracted driving, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is your cell phone. But it's a lot more than just a cell phone issue. Granted, the cell phone issue, either talking or texting on it, is a problem across the state and country. But it's also, distracted driving can be fooling with your radio, taking a drink for pop, or eating, arguing with a passenger, or talking to passengers in the car, trying to watch your kids and drive, or maybe your kids may be misbehaving in the back seat. So it's a gamut of things that can take a person's mind off the road, so to speak, or eyes off the road, that can result in some serious injuries, crashes, or even fatalities.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, you see people sometimes even reading the newspaper or reading their work, because they're going to work or they've got a meeting, and as they're driving down the road, they've got their notes for their meeting. They're reading. People doing their hair, doing their makeup. I mean, just stuff that you just, because they think that they're saving 2 or 3 minutes, but deer runs out in front of you, semi swerves over. There's, your reaction time is limited, and that's the big thing that Lieutenant Call will tell you, is it distracts you from being able to take evasive action or stopping distance. There's just a lot of things that can go wrong when you're not paying attention 100%.
Well, it's interesting. Since I travel, quite a bit coming here to the University of Rio Grande from Portsmouth, I see a lot of interesting things. And some of the interesting things is, I drive on a 4-lane road, 2 lanes one way and 2 lanes going the other. And I'm usually in the right lane. Now, it's my understanding that the left lane of the 2 roads, or the 2 lanes, is for passing.
That's correct.
And some people call that speed lane.
Or fast lane.
Fast lane. But something that I noticed, since we're driving down the road, a car maybe 50 feet ahead of us, rather than wait for us to pass, will pull out in front.
Right.
And is that distracted driving, or?
Distracted driving is, as a division, we have taken upon ourselves to, further look into in our traffic crash investigations. The cell phone is really what started the distracted driving, but I think it's just more than that. So we have been educating and trying to instill in our troopers that during your crash investigation to ask more questions, get more in depth, and find out what happened, because distracted driving is more or less self-reporting. Pretty much if we don't see the violation, then the person who's involved in the crash pretty much has got to tell us that, yeah, I was on the phone, or I was messing with the radio. So it's kind of it's hard data to capture. but our troopers are getting better at you know, not just going to the crash scene and saying, well, this car went off the right side of the road, hit a tree. You know, they're trying to ask to get more involved and get better answers, get more information out of the drivers.
That's interesting. So let's just suppose I was tooling down the road, drinking a cup of coffee, reading my newspaper, smoking a cigarette, but not texting now, and I hit a car. What would I be? What would I be charged with?
I'm assuming if you struck the car in the rear, and you're looking at failing to maintain circular distance ahead, when you're operating a vehicle, regardless of whatever the speed limit is and however you're traveling, how fast you're traveling, you know, it's just the driver's responsibility to drive the vehicle in a reasonable manner to where you can, you know, stop from avoid hitting somebody in the rear end.
Oh, okay. Because, you know, sometimes, let's say I'm fully focused and a car comes out in front of me, and I understand about the individual in the back usually gets dinged on the insurance for hitting someone. But have you seen where someone pulls out in front of you that?
Yeah, you know, if someone pulls out in front of you, obviously, if they pulled out, maybe they didn't see you or underestimated your speed. If you can get over, obviously get over. But there's some factors goes into that. You know, there's a point of first perception if there was a collision, the angle of the collision of the crash.
Okay.
If it was, you know, if it was an angle where a car hit another car on the side, you're probably looking at more of a failure to yield type violation on the person pulled out, or if it was like a rear end crash like we discussed earlier, you're probably looking at a street car distance for or unsafe speed for the car.
Now, would there be an extra charge if it was distracted driving also, or is that just sort of? I mean, is there a charge for distracted driving?
Yes, there's laws for distracted driving in Ohio. They're a little different for juveniles, kids under 18. Distracted driving, if you're under 18, is a primary offense. For law enforcement, primary offense meaning law enforcement can stop juvenile for texting and driving or talking on the phone and driving. As for if you're 18 or over, it's a secondary offense to where law enforcement have to see you make a traffic violation.
I see.
It could be speeding, it could be a left of center violation, and see you on your phone for law enforcement can actually make a stop for that and take any enforcement if they choose to do so.
That's interesting. You know, I know Scott, when you were in the highway patrol, and obviously Barry too, but you saw where we went from don't worry about the seatbelts to seatbelts, and it used to be that you had to stop for a traffic violation to be also charged with no seatbelts.
Well, Ohio still has you have to have another violation.
There
are some states, I know North Carolina, I believe is one.
West Virginia is one.
West Virginia, where they can stop you for just the seatbelt violation, but Ohio still, right now, have to have another valid you know, reason for the stop. You know, you were talking earlier about the people pulling out in front of you. A lot of people don't realize is that there's two parts of a stop sign, an obligation you have. Everybody thinks you run a stop sign and you hit somebody, but first section law is you have to stop at the stop sign. The second is once you stop, you have to not fail to yield to another vehicle. So what happens probably as much or more than running the stop sign, and I had it on the way here today, is, you know, and it's frustrating because a little red car just, I mean, a couple of 100 feet from the intersection where I have to sort of hit my brakes, and you look behind you and there's no other car for 2 miles.
Yep.
And you know, they weren't reading anything, they weren't texting, they looked and their opinion
sort of
was
zoned out
or don't care or you're supposed to stop. So, and then I noticed that person didn't have their seatbelt on, and the first thing I thought, besides the fact they pulled out in front of me and that there was nobody for a mile behind me, was had we hit, even though it had been their fault, they would have been severely injured.
Yeah.
You know, and so the seatbelt is, you know, Barry will tell you, we, you know, wouldn't even feel right in a car without the seatbelt on. I mean, you get so used to, and another thing I'll tell you is how many kids, you stop cars and the kids in the car will have their seatbelts on and the parents won't. I mean, all three kids, little kids in the back seat, you'll have a kid sit in the front seat and mom or dad won't have them on, but the kids do, so.
Well, it really took me about a year to feel comfortable when you got in because, you know, growing up, I remember allowing my children to stand on the, you know, there are 3 or 4 or 5 stand in the front seat of the car. You know, there wasn't, you know, back then there weren't as many laws as there are now about the safety in mind.
I think when it first started, and maybe even now, the reason most people don't wear them is just that thought process. I don't have to do something that someone's telling me I have to do.
That makes sense.
You run into a lot of that. It's just, I mean, every once in a while you have people that you'll stop and they say, well, they thought they had it on, or they actually really thought they did. But a majority, and you know, it just appears that they just feel like no one can tell me what to do. And they'll say it's uncomfortable having the seatbelt on, but I'm sure Barry has said to many people that the windshield's uncomfortable, and the one we always use is a coffin is uncomfortable also. So we just have to wear it.
Yeah, the seatbelt, you're better off with it on than off. Was, you know, me and Chief have been on many crash scenes through our career, and seen where people had their seatbelts on, it saved their lives. And then you've also been on the crash scenes where they didn't have it on, and you know, people were killed or they've been, you know, severely injured and suffer through those injuries maybe for the next month or maybe for the rest of their life.
Well, and some people have this misconception: if you get thrown out of the vehicle, what is it, 4 times likely? Something like 4 times likely to be killed if you're thrown outside. Because they think if they get thrown clear, they'll be all right. But it's something like 4 times more likely to be killed if you get thrown outside. Because what happens, you get thrown outside, and the vehicle continues the same way you are, and it runs over you. And just, so I personally have never seen a crash. I can't say that they don't happen. Maybe Barry has, but I've not ever been or seen a crash where someone got more injured because they had it on. Yeah. And I mean, because you always hear somebody will always tell you they have a cousin who's got a third cousin and an aunt who would have, if they wouldn't have had their seatbelt on, they'd have been okay. But I've just
I think in most instances like that, yes, somebody may have died with their seatbelt on, but you know, I'm confident that most, if not all those incidents, you know, it probably did save some other injuries, so to speak. Because there are those crashes that, you know, such an impact, and sometimes, you know, it's just a seatbelt isn't quite enough.
No, that's a good point, because that's, you'll have people come up to a fatal crash, and the people will have their seatbelts on, and everybody standing around will be, well, if, you know, it's too bad they had their seatbelts on because they would have been okay. Just sometimes you're hit so hard at such a force that it wouldn't have mattered, and there's just nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's those other times that it would do good.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. This is truck country, or it seems like it's truck country.
US 35.
What is the laws about riding in the back of an open truck?
Oh, open pickup truck?
Yeah, pickup truck. Yes.
To do it legally, there should be some type of seating in there if you're going to be under 16 years old. There is a section law for that. If you're, help me out here, Chief, it's been a while since.
I think anybody under 16 can't be in a moving pickup truck.
Can't be in a moving pickup truck, but if you're 16 or over, they got to have some type of restraints. There's seats and restraints.
So you basically can't ride around town with 12, 11-year-old, 8-year-old kids because, one, if they jump out, if they fall out, or obviously if we're talking about if you get hit in a car with seatbelts on and you can't make it, how are you going to, you're in a pickup truck and it rolls. Right. So it's basically if you're 16 or under, you can't be in the back of a moving pickup truck. And
so if you're over 18, then you're able to.
You are legally, but it's nothing I would do.
I wouldn't encourage it.
Okay, all right. And then you know, talking about seatbelts, it is interesting. Our buses don't require, you know, school buses don't require seatbelts. However, some states are starting to enact laws that require you to have seatbelts. And I know buses are more protective because of the weight and because of the length and things of that nature. Do you feel that Ohio will sometime, or are they looking at regulations now about buckling up for the kids?
I've been out of it for a little bit. It seems like you see stuff on the news every once in a while, the legislators talk about it, and it's unfortunately one of those things where you have a school bus crash and then everybody talks about it. I think there are some buses that do have seatbelts.
Some buses do have come with restraints. I can't speak for the Gallia Post or City School District or any other school district how many of their buses are equipped with all seat belts. But I know there are some that are, you know, as we move forward, there's more and more buses that are coming with restraints.
And so that's a good thing?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. And then finally, you know, we only have a few minutes left, but let's talk a little bit about motorcycles. Now, Mike Thompson, who's the instructional design and media director here and who's running the behind the scenes kind of thing, drives a motorcycle. And we know that the faster you go, the lighter the bike gets.
Okay.
Because of the weight. And we also know that if you are going 60 miles an hour and you get hit, it's my understanding that the distance is squared as it was 50 miles per hour.
Okay.
Any thoughts on, since we're coming into the motorcycle, some cautions that you might get, because, you know, we think we're riding a heavy bike, but it becomes lighter and lighter as it goes faster.
Well, you know, in Ohio, we don't have if you're a novice driver, you're required to wear a helmet. A novice driver is someone who has passed their permit or passed their test, but they're required to wear a helmet for a year afterwards.
Okay.
So after that year, you're in Ohio, you're not required to wear a helmet. Obviously, the Highway Patrol encourages everybody to wear a helmet involved in a crash, because when you're involved in a motorcycle crash, it gives you extra protection. That's just as important as wearing a seatbelt in a car or pickup truck. Huh. So, the helmets are there to protect your head. And when you're involved in a motorcycle crash, you know, or any crash for that matter, you're pretty much at God's will. You know, you don't have control of what you're going to do with the bike. You don't have, or car. You don't have any control where you may land or what, you know, any control what you may get hit by. So obviously, when driving a car or motorcycle, encourage you to wear all the safety equipment you possibly can.
Anything to add on it?
Well, and not only cars, but you know, you mentioned earlier this is a big pickup truck area, but I mean, you ride up and down the road, there's deer carcasses all the way. And I know the Gallia Post is probably every post has had some pretty horrific motorcycle crashes with deer over the last 10 years or so, even before I left. And you know, it's one thing if you're a motorcycle and you're watching for other cars to pull out in front of you, you're watching for trucks and things, but you know how horrific it is when you're in your car and all of a sudden a deer jumps out in front of you. You've got some evasive action, but it's just like you got hit by a big old missile. And that's one of the big fears I have with people out being on motorcycles is, besides all those other drivers and then the motorcycle people that go too fast and stuff like that, it's just that you just got to really be careful about the deer. That's a dangerous thing.
Well, you know, I had the opportunity to talk with Mike, and one of the questions I had was, what about dogs? Because a dog's maybe man's best friends, but boy, they love those motorcycles.
Any type of animal. It could be a groundhog crossing the road. I mean, any type of wildlife or pet out on a highway.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, like you said, once you lay it down, you've got no control.
Yeah, you just sort of skid along. Well, we're with Lieutenant Barry Call. He's with the MEGS, or the Gallia MEGS Highway Patrol, and we're talking a little bit about distracted driving and some other things. So how about some words of wisdom to leave the audience with?
Well, when you're operating a motor vehicle, you know, it's your responsibility to drive the car in a safe manner. You know, last year alone, we had almost 14,000 documented crashes that were due to distracted driving.
Wow.
And 51 of those were fatalities.
Wow.
So as far as I'm concerned, that's 14,000 too many. It's not a right to drive a motor vehicle on the road. It's a privilege. And you know, stay focused on what's in front of you on the highway, and keep control of what's inside your car. And if the phone rings or a text goes off, pull off the side of the road, answer it. It's not only for your own safety, but for everybody else's safety as well.
That's a good point. Good point. Any final words of wisdom?
I think one of the commercials you hear all the time that I think is the best is it says it can wait. It's a text or phone call, it can wait.
Well, I remember when we didn't carry phones around.
And the world went on, didn't it?
And they were attached to a wall.
Yep.
Hey, I'm Patrick Dangle, filling in for Sheriff Keith Wood with Scott Borden, who's the University of Rio Grande's campus police chief. We just had an opportunity to talk with Lieutenant Barry Call. Thank you for listening and watching Safety Net.